Welcome everybody. I'm Akshat Rathi. I'm a senior reporter for Bloomberg News, and we are in this plenary session going to talk about technology innovation and supply chains that are at the heart of national competitiveness strategy. We'll have a few opening remarks from the esteemed panel I have next to me, and then I'll open up the floor for interventions, and you can ask questions, you can give your thoughts on the topic. To do so, use your name tag and turn it vertical so I can keep an eye out on who are the people who'd like to speak. But thanks again. And with that, let me turn the floor to Teresa Ribera, who's the Executive Vice President for a clean, just, and competitive transition at the European Commission.
Thank you so much. I could say again, but with a different capacity. And I'm happy to speak on innovation. I think that one of the main headlines these days is whether we are able to cooperate to provide the right solutions that people deserve and are asking for, or whether we enter into a turmoil that makes things even more difficult than when they are. And in this context, innovation and I go at cooperation are key. Cooperation between academic researchers, public institutions, consumers, and business. Innovation in the whole pathway towards a successful development that can provide the outcomes that we are expecting for. And it is true that innovation fosters competitiveness, but not only. It is also something that relates back to what we expect in terms of affordability, to access to secure energy solutions, resilience, so to ensure that the dependencies do not become burdens, but cooperative modes to work all over the world, and developments of homegrown solutions, and decarbonization, because that's also security in terms of access to energy, and of course it is also something that requires innovation. I think that this is what it has taken us to an increasing, improving setting that brings prosperity to all, but still we need to find many answers to things that do not count on answers yet. We are speaking about the age of electricity, and that's quite reassuring because we have done a lot for decades, and we count on very interesting solutions that ensure these affordable responses to the demands coming from the business communities and the households. It is something that it is quite present in our day-to-day all over the world, but I would try to focus on Europe. Consider solar power. Once it was a pioneering technology, and it is now the world's most cost-effective power source. It has reduced its cost by tenfold over the last 15 years and added twice as much generation as any other electricity source in 2024. But we have a long way to go still. The energy systems do work differently today than what it was required not so far ago. And the innovations that we need to bring to build a bright future need to be shaped today. This is why I could make some comments on how we can build a reliable, well-functioning innovation ecosystem. Improvements that we cannot take for granted, but that need to be cultivated by all of us together. For it to engage, it needs the alignment of public support, enabling regulation, clear market signals, accessible finance, and knowledge sharing and test facilities. But to be maintained, it needs to be sustained by effective competition policies and by a growing demand, a relevant market that demands this, so to make the business case attractive. So to flourish, it requires scale, eliminating market fragmentation, something which is quite important in Europe, to complete our single markets, and creating lead markets that allow us to foster innovation at a high speed. The good news is that this trend is already taking place. Innovation investment is accelerating. The International Energy Agency reports that energy research and development spending has been substantial in last years, rising at approximately 6% annually. Since 2015, 200 billion euros has been channeled into energy startups, with expectations for this dynamic market to continue growing fast. However, if we want to reach the potential of our innovation ecosystem, we need to mobilize more funding by leveraging private investments with public de-risking instruments. This is what we are trying to fix at the European scale as part of our prosperity and strategic autonomy goals, to move from dependency on imported fossil fuels to securing a competitive and resilient future built on cooperation and reliable value chains. Our innovation model is based on several pillars that cover all angles necessary to foster innovation. First, investing in the research and innovation of technologies of tomorrow. Horizon Europe is the EU's main research and innovation framework. Looking ahead, the next multi-annual financial framework proposes to double the allocation with a budget of 175 billion euros. Second, supporting the scale-up of our innovative companies. The multi-billion euro Scale-up Euro Fund is designed to support fast-growing companies in crucial technology areas. Third, supporting industry decarbonizing their production. The 40 billion euros Innovation Fund and the 100 billion Industrial Decarbonization Bank channel back revenues from the EU emissions trading schemes into the innovation of the same industries, so to facilitate these leading markets, facilitating innovative responses. What industry pays to compensate their emissions should serve as a resource to finance their decarbonization, fostering innovation all over Europe. Fourth, ensuring a fair competition environment by robustly enforcing state aid, antitrust, and merger competition rules that align with our goals also in terms of sustainability. And finally, ensuring a stable and predictable energy and climate framework with clear targets to offer a clear direction to innovators and investors. Our message for the innovation ecosystem in Europe is clear. There is no more room for a model that belongs to the past. We are looking at the future, betting into the future, where innovation brings a new energy system based on renewables, affordability, clean energy in general, resilience and decarbonization, and we are looking at this with optimism. Recent years have brought breakthrough innovations offering new opportunities for competitiveness. Think about solid-state cooling technologies that avoid environmentally harmful refrigerants, or fusion lasting more than 20 minutes already. Electric vehicles charging in a matter of minutes. The rise of maritime electric and methanol commercial container ships. But this is not only an issue of competitiveness for industrials. It is also something that needs to bring opportunities for our society. Whether it is rooftop solar and agri-solar empower our citizens and farmers, whether we identify new ways to ensure affordable energy bills for our households. Transforming these ideas into opportunities must be key. 30% of the emissions reductions needed to achieve our net zero CO2 emissions globally depend on technologies that still need to be demonstrated. This is an untapped reserve for our future prosperity waiting to be unlocked. We need to generalize, to deploy what it is already available. And that is a good basis to keep on doing, to keep on innovating, to keep on tapping on the future of our prosperity. All this funding needs stability, needs to ensure confidence on our capacity to do this exercise, so to provide an appealing context for investors. We need to keep ensuring predictable climate targets, providing clear direction and confidence for investors and innovators, for the benefits of this innovation to be exponential and spread across the world. For all of this, we need places like the International Energy Agency, providing reliable data, historic series that provide good pieces of information to keep on thinking on how to improve. And overall, we need to keep on working with you all, other players, other public and private players, thinking on how we can enhance our action to deliver in the time to come. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to bring in Shinichi Kihara, who's the Director General for Energy and Environment Policy at the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry in Japan.
Thank you, Chair. I am Shinichi Kihara, Director General for Energy and Environment Policy in Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. Congratulations for holding this third forum led by strong IEA's leadership. This forum was established following Japan's request to the IEA during the G7 presidency in 2023 to build an international platform for discussed energy innovation. I'll briefly introduce Japan's recent efforts and our expectations for the IEA. Today, energy policy is inseparably linked to industry policy. Securing sufficient and clean power sources at competitive price is essential to meet the increasing demand from industries driven by AI, data centers, or electrification. And furthermore, advancing energy transition requires appropriate industrial policy to secure economic security and supply chain security. Innovation is the driving engine to enhance competitiveness of technologies. Technology development and policy support are required. So collaboration among public and private players is crucial. Japan has passed dedicated law for promoting green transformation in 2023. The law has set up new big carrot, big stick mechanism to boost industry transformation. As a big carrot, Japanese government will inject $130 billion equivalent investment through next 10 years by issuing economic transition bonds. As a big stick, carbon pricing will phase in from this year. And fiscally, the revenue from the big stick will pay the big investment through the big carrot. The big carrot will support development and deployment of diverse innovative technologies such as advanced nuclear reactors, perovskite solar cells, hydrogen and ammonia solutions, and others. We will achieve triple breakthrough of energy security, industrial competitiveness, and emission reductions simultaneously. Today, however, we need to achieve quadruple breakthrough, adding economic security as fourth element. Innovation should take into account of building resilient and diversified supply chains. Innovative technology has to help us reduce dependency on specific country, technology, or fuel, and give us wider options. For example, regarding critical minerals, developing alternative new materials for rare metals and increasing indigenous supply through recycling contributes to resilience. Another example in mobility, while supply chain of battery is heavily dependent on specific country today, we should not narrow down our options. Combination of sustainable fuel with hybrid or flexible fuel car will keep us our option wide. In Brazil, Toyota has introduced flex fuel plug-in hybrid Prius. It can drive as an EV or E100 or on gas. So it is a pragmatic dream car with all of above solutions. So this is a kind of the mixture of energy security and also the supply chain security and driven by the innovation. So we expect the IEA to step up its analysis and policy recommendation through lens of supply chain security in various energy sources and technologies. And I hear that the coming ETP 2025, coming soon, will include supply chain security analysis for technologies such as solar, wind power, storage batteries, EV, heat pumps, and electrolyzers, and others. This is timely and important. So I expect today's discussion will tie the energy innovation, industry strategy, and supply chain strategy together. Such IEA analysis will be strong guidance for the member countries to develop strategies to achieve quadruple breakthroughs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, could we have Stephen Jones, the Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the OECD from Australia?
Thanks, colleagues, and great to be with you here this afternoon for an important dialogue, bringing together government representatives and representatives from industry, all focused on the single goal of ensuring that we can improve our energy security, but importantly, ensure that we can meet the energy needs challenge while decoupling energy demand growth, economic growth from carbon emissions growth, and that is the thing that unifies us all. Really pleased that Japan has taken the initiative of ensuring that we have a dialogue on innovation as a part of this ministerial meeting, so we congratulate you for doing that. And thank the IEA for the important role they play in energy security, but also the convening role that they play more broadly. Innovation, three things: technology and know-how, capital, and stable policy. And my friend from Japan has just talked about the importance of stable policy and stable policy settings. I'll say a few things about each of those. Perhaps starting with the stable policy settings. Australia, if we were to look at us 20, 25 years ago, we had what you would call a pretty typical industrial area energy system, highly reliant on fossil fuels, highly reliant on coal, and a grid system that was very reflective of that. Perhaps laid out of the blocks, but we have made significant steps over the last decade in decarbonising our energy tradition. So we've come to a point today where 43% of our electricity transmission on any normal day is renewable energy. Some days and in some parts of our grid it's even higher than that. It's well in excess of 70%. So we've come a long way in a short period of time. Hasn't been easy, but having clear, consistent government policy settings has been an important part of that, particularly in attracting the capital into key parts of that investment effort. Adopting the Paris targets, legislating has been a key part of that. To your policy stability point, when government holds its feet to the fire by adopting clear legislated targets, it not only holds government activity accountable to the people who elect us in a democratic system, but also sends a very clear message to the private sector. This is where government policy is going. And if you're going to make a 20, 30, 40-year investment in grid infrastructure, in generation, then that's the sort of certainty that you need. We can't have government policy which is chopping and changing. We need clear, consistent government policy which is going to attract the levels of private capital that is necessary. Of course, in the area of innovation, government needs to do more than just provide clear policy settings, because to attract the sorts of private capital is going to be necessary, particularly with early stage technology and early stage innovation. It needs to be de-risked. It needs to either be de-risked in time by government entering the field for early stage innovation and ensuring that we provide an incubator role for that early innovation, or de-risks in public-private partnerships, either at the financing stage or through other mechanisms to ensure that we are crowding in the sort of capital that is going to be needed to take that innovation from start-up to mainstream. Our earlier speakers have given examples of that. So some of the frameworks that we've put in place to ensure that we've delivered on that, in addition to what we call the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, which was established about 15 years ago. Important piece of our architecture, plays a financing role for accelerating the pace of pre-commercial activities. So important part in that financing. By absorbing some of that early risk in a project. Accelerating, what we found is accelerating time to market, time to mainstream, some of that early innovation effort. Since 2012, ARENA's committed over $3 billion to more than 800 projects. On unlocking, that $3 billion is generally unlocked sometimes 4 times the amount as you're crowding in private capital. So around about $13 billion worth of capital has been attracted to those efforts. Key role in helping technology scale up and attract that private capital that I've talked about. So the sorts of things, yes, of course, we're doing solar, hydrogen, batteries, bioenergy and grid integration as a part of that effort. Also, as many of you are, seeing the importance in these uncertain times of developing sovereign clean energy industries which will underpin our ongoing role as a reliable energy supplier. And I should have made this point when I was talking about policy certainty. Australia attaches great importance to this, and I know this is something that there's a regular dialogue between our partners in the Southeast Asian region, being in a reliable, dependable, secure supply chain for energy. We see that as a critical part of our role. It's in traditional energy sources, but as we debate and discuss access to critical raw materials, I think that's going to go in a whole new and important direction, and I want to use this as an opportunity to talk about the important role that the IEA will play in that. Look, a couple of other tools before I finish up that we're using, financial tools that we are using to stimulate investment include stimulating production through things such as production tax offsets, an important part particularly in our renewable mobile fuels strategy, and ensuring, as I said, in addition to that the key work that we're doing around policy, ensuring that we have a whole range of public finance available to crowd in private finance through a range of different instruments and materials. I've got to say, in conclusion, the weight of my contribution here has been around the importance of clear, stable, consistent government policy, because I think that is probably more important than the amount of capital that we're able to bring to the table, as important as that is. Thanks for the opportunity to share some thoughts.
Thank you. And now we're going to have one more intervention before we open up to the floor for comments and questions. So start thinking about what you'd like to add to this conversation. But before we do that, we have Fridtjof Unander, the Senior Advisor at Aker Solutions in Norway.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts on behalf of Aker Solutions. I also want to extend my thanks to the IEA for organizing this innovation forum and congratulate you with bringing together governmental officials, industry and academia to have these important discussions. I think it's very important and probably more important than ever. This morning, IEA Executive Director Fatih Birol said that we need to stay in for the whole marathon to scale innovation. That's certainly something that we in Aker Solutions would subscribe to. We have a history going more than 180 years back, dating to a mechanical workshop along the Aker River in Oslo. So over 2 centuries, we have evolved from shipbuilding and heavy industry into a global engineering and technology company specializing in innovative solutions for the energy sector, including developing and delivering some of the world's most complex offshore oil and gas projects. And this heritage matter, and these long lines matters, because building offshore platforms, subsea systems, and large processing facilities require what is needed for the energy transition: advanced system integration, large-scale modular fabrication, supply chain coordination, and not at least continuous focus on innovation to stay on the competitive edge. Our activities within CCS over more than 2 decades are a good example of this. We built strong experience across the entire CCS value chain through several groundbreaking projects starting in the 1990s. In recent years, this has been further strengthened through the Northern Lights project on the west coast of Norway. It's an offshore CO2 storage facility with a capacity of 5 million tons of CO2 per year. We also have the Brevik CCS project, which opened just before the summer, which captures CO2 from cement production. And we have also the Oslo CCS project, which will capture CO2 from waste to energy production, and today is the biggest emission source of Oslo. So we do see a clear opportunity to contribute to making CCS a success worldwide, working closely with local stakeholders and local industry. So we are very pleased to help moving CCS from pilots to full-scale industrial deployment, and with a continued focus to integrate capture, transport, and storage value chains. And we believe that for CCS to scale, we have to be able to move this across the whole value chain in tandem, because if we start with storage and transport and networks lag, capture project will stall and vice versa. So this is an example where we really need to have focus along the whole value chain and create values. And Aker Solutions, we also see a role here as a sort of a project integrator in the CCS space. However, innovation is not scaled without industrial capacity. In our case, access to yards and fabrication facilities enables module production, serial manufacturing, and predictable execution. Industrial capacity ensures that innovation moves beyond pilots, becoming fully integrated energy systems delivered at scale. This is also true for offshore wind, which is a sector that has faced significant cost pressures in recent years. We believe that to enhance the competitiveness and accelerate deployment, we must industrialize further and develop new technology solutions for offshore wind. Cost reduction is essential for the long-term viability of the sector. Offshore wind draws directly on capabilities developed over decades in offshore oil and gas. Large substructures, heavy lifting, complex marine operations, supply chain coordination, and engineering for harsh environments, all very important parts of the total cost picture for offshore wind. Our expertise allows us to engineer and industrialize critical components for new technology, moving from bespoke project-by-project designs to more standardized, reproducible, and optimized solutions. There are high ambitions for offshore wind production in the North Sea Basin. We need to build a strong industry to be able to meet this ambition. This industrial capacity should be built step by step, enabling steady volume, stimulating innovation at every stage, and creating the conditions for durable cost reductions over time. If we succeed with this, the North Sea Basin can be the offshore wind powerhouse that Europe needs. But with that, we also need to develop other sources, power production sources, like SMRs, which has been alluded to earlier today as well. We believe that SMR represents a shift in the industrial logic. Their competitiveness depends on modularization, serial production, and standardized manufacturing from the outset. Here again, strong supply chains and industrial facilities, including yards, will be important. Factory-based module fabrication will help reduce construction risk and shorten timelines. Serial production enables learning curves that drive down cost reduction over time. So if we align industrial capacity, supply chains, and digital innovation, SMR can become not just an energy solution, but also an industrial opportunity. And this brings me back to the key point for us. Whether in CCS, offshore wind, or SMR, innovation scales when it's anchored in strong supply industries with manufacturing capacity and coordinated value chains. Aker Solutions stand ready to contribute through our engineering expertise, yard capacity, and digital capabilities to help scaling critical manufacturing capacity and accelerate innovation essential for strengthening long-term competitiveness. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I'm going to open the floor for interventions and comments, but I'll start maybe with a question to Stephen Jones. You talked about the fact that you'd like to have sovereign clean energy industry. But the world is interconnected, supply chains are interconnected. At Bloomberg, I've been writing stories about how specifically electricity grid infrastructure, so things like transformers, cables, etc., are typically things that aren't made in the places where they do get deployed. So when you talk about sovereign clean energy industry, are there boundaries that you set? Are there areas where sovereignty matters more and matters less in other places?
Well, a whole heap of that componentry you talk, there's a global shortage, which every country around the world is experiencing. Probably the best way to describe Australia's position on this is that we have, for the best part of 40 years, been one of the most open trading countries on the planet, perhaps the Netherlands, to the exclusion of the Netherlands, but we unilaterally reduced all of our tariffs because we thought it was good for strengthening our capacity and productivity within Australia. We haven't retreated from that position. We still believe that our economy is stronger, and collectively we're stronger together as we trade and rely on each other for the things that we have a mutual advantage in. All of that said, we have identified a few areas where we do think we need to have a sovereign capacity, not replacing important trading relationships, but ensuring that we do have a sovereign capacity. And we've talked about, and we'll talk further over the course of the 2 days together, about certain parts within the critical mineral supply chain as an example of that. I could probably best describe it as we are focusing more on the new areas of energy generation and fuel generation than the old ones, but we do think that it is critical, while maintaining that posture as an open trading country, that we have sovereign capability, and we've set up what we've called a national reconstruction fund to ensure that we're able to do targeted investments in areas which meet those criteria.
Thank you. I'm seeing interventions coming from the floor. There's one over there, yeah. The floor is yours, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Nobuo Tanaka, former executive director of this organization some time ago. As an old boy, I just want to make some comment. The current geopolitics of energy seems to me that American strategy of using fossil fuels for its dominance seems that the US is returning to the petrostate. IEA was created because of the oil shock. While that means, American strategy seems to me make alliance with other petrostates like Russia or Saudi Arabia, while China is another dominant power using the electricity as its energy dominance. So I call them electrostates, using EVs, batteries, solar, wind, turbines, critical minerals, everything China is using for its dominance as the electrostate. Europe is basically doing same thing. Being independent of Russian gas, oil, Europe is doing exactly the same policy as China, as an electrostate. US diplomacy is pushing Europe closer to China even. So the problem for Japan or Korea is, which side should we ally with? We have to go both, of course, but I feel that China definitely has too much concentration on the supply chain of the critical mineral. We have the concern about it. But this is a consequence of China's economic growth. Japan helped a lot. After the Second World War, our compensation for our mistakes, we transferred the technology, invest heavily into ASEAN countries and China, and with ODA. So the success is the result of this success of industrial diplomacy or is the competitiveness of China. But because of the success of economic growth in China in ASEAN countries, Japan do not have any problem of flood of immigrants or refugees from Asia, which Europe and US are suffering as a first priority of the politics. So, but the issue is that Henry Kissinger, I talked with him as an executive director-elect. He told me that, Mr. Tanaka, your job is to get China and India into the International Energy Agency to make the relevant policy place for energy security as well as climate change mitigation. India is now on the way to be a member, I hope. But this is exactly the time, for the sake of industrial competitiveness and decarbonization and harmonization of the global energy geopolitics, I think IEA should get China seriously into the dialogue here and solve the issue of supply chain dominance, or at the same time, overcapacity of these, let's say, electricity-related technologies or green technologies as well. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. We have a number of interventions coming now. We do have to close the session by about 2:28, so I'm going to try and get as many of you as possible, but if you can keep your remarks to about 1 minute or so, that'd be much appreciated. Can Julia want to go next?
Thank you so much. I have 3 points to make. First of all, congratulations to the IEA on this innovation forum. It keeps on getting bigger, and I can certainly say that the topics that you chose are absolutely spot on. Reflecting on the element, also building on Nobuo Tanaka-san's points around geopolitics and resilience, the point around competitiveness is, I think what we're trying to solve for is innovation becomes affordable or makes the technologies affordable. And they only matter if they become affordable at scale, but that means needing to have scale. My perspective is that we need to have a better way of tracking what is it premium, what is it negative premium, or what is still has a premium, like Fridtjof was talking about CCS. And being able to have a lens around and accountability as well in terms of what are companies investing in, what are governments supporting, so there's smarter spending, so we can actually have that affordability question being central. So from my perspective, it's not a name and shame, it's much more a name and fame, and how do we group that such that we have more accountability and more opportunities to see what do we need to support. The second element is IEA has done some excellent work on the race to the first. I would add the race to the firsts, because you become affordable only if you scale and if you have this cost trajectory. So being able to see how countries can support and how programs can support not one project, but a series of portfolio of projects so that you can de-risk faster. Last but not least, I had the pleasure of moderating this session on grids. I would underline again the importance of having more resilient grids, that being the backbone of electrification, backbone of competitiveness. So making sure that we don't forget how we look at grids and how they're positioned as central in the transition. Thank you.
Thank you for setting the bar as a moderator on how to make interventions nice and clean and short. Can I get Elena to go next, please?
Thank you. First of all, thanks a lot for this rich dialogue. I am Elena Bow, InnoEnergy. InnoEnergy is a company that since 2010 we are supporting and investing startups and innovators to push the energy transition. So my contribution will be a bit about the investment part of it. So just 3 aspects. The first one, I think that regulation creates the market conditions, and this is very important for this new innovation. You have mentioned, many of you, stability of targets, and this is something which is crucial when we are talking about off-takers and when we are talking about investors. I mean, just an example, looking at the manufacturing projects timelines, final investment decisions that we are taking this year means that the production is going to be at the end of the decade. So this is something that it is, this kind of long-term commitment is decisive in order to be competitiveness and introduce this kind of innovation. And if we doubt, if the investors and off-takers see the regulators doubting about the targets, this is a paralysis. The second thing has about reducing dependencies, and we are talking about value chains. And as we say that the value chain is as strong as its weakest link. And that is important because that focuses actually where is the gap and where we have to strengthen the efforts. Just an example, the Vice President was mentioning the part also of the solar industrial zone. So the thing is that, for instance, in Europe, polysilicon and solar panels, there are some kind of production, but there is no ingots or wafers. So the thing is that we have to be very targeting. And also in terms of dependencies, it has been mentioned the critical raw materials. I think that there, besides different materials, besides different chemistries, something very relevant is to consider recycling. And the third point is the collaboration. I think that all the countries, all the states are thinking about national competitiveness. And that is great because this means welfareness for their citizens. But also we cannot forget that we need a strategic approach to foreign direct investments. And sometimes this means that we need to collaborate with non-European or not countries and partners in order to de-risk those aspects where we are not so good at it, for instance, industrialization. So, and finally, I think that in terms of supply chains, Europe has some good examples like the European Value Chain Alliance, the EVA, or the SIA, the European Solar Initiative Alliance, that could be good examples of thinking with the value chains in the heads. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get IPHE to go next? Yes, please.
Thank you, Ashkat. I cannot honestly resist when we have Madam Executive Vice President, European Commissioner Ribeira in the room, to ask her a question about the European position. Because, I mean, when I interpret the IEA analysis, I see there's a clean energy manufacturing race going on globally. Mr. Tanaka, my good friend Nobuo Tanaka, nice to see you again. He already mentioned how China is running away with it, basically. Has been running away with it. And you see, if you look at the European position in the last 10 years, I mean, Europe has been definitely losing ground, in my view, and also in the analysis of the IEA. And now you see with the new generation of technologies, I'm working now in the field of hydrogen. Europe was far ahead of anyone else with the European strategy, beautiful plans, wonderful ideas, targets that are far away from anywhere getting implemented. So, as my neighbor was saying, this is undermining the credibility for investors. So much policy uncertainty. So great plans, great strategies, but very, very poor implementation and very slow. Is Europe and European Commission going to turn this around? Because going with the business as usual policies are not going to cut it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your question, which is a very interesting question. It also allows me to insist on the fact that we want to be an electro-state. I think that counting on homegrown energy, and in certain cases we also need green molecules, or at least molecules that are fully decarbonized, to ensure that we can count on our own resources. So yes, being efficient in the use of our existing materials is important to lower our dependency from abroad. Building and upgrading our grids and our pipes could be very important. De-risking and lowering the cost of capital to make the bets there where we need them is important. Building reliable relations with other partners, including other countries to ensure the availability and affordability of the materials is very important. And I could add that we had to face the unexpected. There is a member of the European Parliament stating that we didn't expect a neighbor that was going to be so aggressive, or counting on a partner that is wondering where the partnership with Europe should go. But I think that even in that context, we have been keeping our track and reminding us that the goals are quite closely related. So we cannot speak about affordability or security if we do not speak about climate, or if we do not speak about electricity in the age of electricity. And I think that this means putting in place many things, and that's what it is being signaled in the next multi-annual financial framework, but it is also what it is part of our grids package and the debates on how to ensure that we develop an union of energy in Europe, counting on the strengths that we already have been building for decades and looking into the future. So I would say that it is not fair to say that we have done nothing. It is good to see that there are many other partners in the world that have been stepping in and doing much. I think that that is good news, very honestly. And the point is that we may be avoiding wasting our time in things that do not deliver. So yes, we may be thinking of what are the technologies that we would need to develop in the time to come to become net zero, a net zero energy system, a net zero economy, not only the energy system. And yes, we may need hydrogen, we may need to capture CO2 and to use it or to store it. We may need to deploy massively the solutions that are already within reach. And in the meantime, it is a transition period where we would still need to count on what it's been connected to the old model. But I think that we are stepping in under difficult circumstances, and you may say that Europe is a weird political animal, which is truth, but do not mistake the capacity of Europe to overcome the difficulties. I think that we are performing, even under a stressful context as the one that we are going through, and not missing the direction of travel, but on the contrary, betting on the direction of travel. Being reliable is an asset.
Thank you. I see there are 7-8 interventions, and we have 7-8 minutes. So I'm going to take them pretty quickly, one by one now. There was Sarah over there, McGill University, if you want to go quickly.
Is it working? Okay. Yeah, so first I'll just start by saying congratulations to the IEA. I think it's not just the events, but also in the report in general that was released. It's a huge step forward in my perspective to be including innovation for electric grids as a whole, a system, rather than just thinking about individual technologies. I did want to come back to short-term supply chain risks to innovation. I think that the more that we have real critical constraints like transformer shortages, the more of a risk there is to actually deploying real innovation, because it starts to be put on the back burner. So I would recommend that it might be worthy to start to consider more immediate term supply chain risks along the grid, not just the technologies themselves. I think that, especially now with the type of data that we can collect, I think it's becoming a lot more possible. Efficiency, 2019, myself and a collaborator published on grid efficiency, and we determined you can avoid 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide each year by solving grid efficient or transmission and distribution losses. So that to me means not just transmission and distribution losses, it means reducing the amount of capacity that needs to be deployed, which also means a reduction in critical materials. So I think efficiency can really play a big role as well. Last, and I'll make it quick, long-term supply chains. I've heard a lot about recycling. I think circularity really matters. What I also think we need to be concerned about, and commenced to evaluate are questions of operational realities to circularity. For example, lifetime extensions. What can we actually do from an operational perspective in terms of extending the life of solar and wind projects, because we do face component failure. However, I do think that there's going to be an increasing opportunity to be able to take advantage of those challenges. Last, I wanted to circle back as well on the comment of China. Like your reports say, there is a large concentration there, so further engagement, I believe, could be of benefit.
Thank you. Blue Wave.
Hi, I'm Devashish Paul. I'm the CEO and founder of Blue Wave AI, a software tech company based out of Ottawa, Canada, 200 kilometers from McGill University, although I didn't go there. Tanaka-san brought up some really good comments, but I'd like to rewind to something fundamental, which goes all the way back to why we're sitting here. And James Watt basically said that every unit of production is proportional to how much energy goes in. And how much energy goes in is dependent on where it comes from. So if we go back to large quantities of oil being found outside of Baku, Azerbaijan, basically all the geopolitics we're talking about is basically tied to oil being available only in certain regions, petrostates, versus if everyone becomes an electrostate, you can natively produce sufficient energy for your own country's wealth generation and for its citizens. And so the question he had was, where does Japan align? So for my company, the city of Tokyo invested in my company to go set up a Blue Wave AI Japan GK to basically bring Canadian AI software technology to help optimize grid and electrified transport in the Japanese economy. But where I'm going with this is why we started our company in the first place. And it goes back to me studying in darkness under load shedding when I was a kid under oil lamps and candlelight. And basically, they did studies to show that the exam performance of the kids studying without electricity was inferior to those who had it. So I think the electrostate trajectory is actually the most important thing that IEA can do all around. Tech startups like me are enablers to that, but we need the policy and governance framework globally to adopt our tech and deploy it so that every nation, and Canada's an example, we sit on the intersection of being a petrostate and electrostate, and I can only make this comment as a tax-paying citizen who is partially annoyed by we're dragged down being a petrostate. My colleagues at NR Canada can't speak because they have to appease all constituents. However, I think like sitting here in Europe, you don't have a massive pool of oil sands like we do in Canada. So the electrostate trajectory for you or our colleagues in Japan kind of makes like a lot of sense, which is why China's gone there in the first place. And I don't believe the supply chain is limited to them. Countries like Canada have critical minerals that can enable the electrostates of the world.
Thank you. Can we get University of Leeds to go next?
Thanks very much, Peter Taylor, University of Leeds. So, yeah, just wanted to highlight really that as grids around the world decarbonise, so I think increasingly countries are looking at the potential of electrification to decarbonise industry, particularly outside perhaps the most energy intensive industries. And so a lot of my research is looking at those sort of next tier of industrial sectors. And I think what we see is that not only can electricity decarbonise, but in many cases it has other benefits in terms of reducing other environmental impacts, improved productivity, perhaps higher product quality, better working conditions, and of course the industry is then able to contribute to flexibility services for the grid. And so I think when you look at the research literature, though, there's actually remarkably little about these wider benefits of electrifying industry. And so I think it would be really great if the IEA were able, as part of its work, to really focus on that issue and actually demonstrate, which sectors can benefit most quickly and where the biggest wins are. Because as I say, at the moment, the evidence base is a little bit anecdotal. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we go next? I think we have about 4 minutes before interventions still left.
Thank you for the opportunity to contribute. When we speak about national competitiveness and resilience in the energy transition space, we must reframe the conversation. Critical mineral competitiveness is no longer about resource ownership. It's about processing capability. For example, lithium demand is accelerating, but the true challenges are in refining, separation, chemistry, materials, scalability, and sustainable extraction. The countries that will lead are those who can simply not just have the deposits in the ground, but can control advanced processing and have the technologies that can commercialize quickly. At LITIS, we've demonstrated we're able to extract 98% of lithium at a paying field pilot from low concentration sources of lithium. These are brines that were once considered uneconomic. This is what strengthens national competitiveness. It's innovation that expands the resource base while also reducing environmental impact. If we do not invest strategically in domestic processing innovation and scale-up capital, we risk shifting from resource dependence to processing dependence. We're also expanding into lithium recovery from battery recycling streams. Designing supply chains is something that we've done since day one. We integrate extraction and battery recycling through advanced material science. Ultimately, competitiveness will be determined not only by the geology, but by chemistry, engineering, and deployment speed. Thank you.
Thank you. At some point, we'll be cut off and there'll be a live stream from the ministerial. So I'm going to make this quick for everybody to go in and make their comments. But can you go quickly, please?
Okay, the quick fire round. So Nick Applear from European Space Agency. We heard a lot from the panel about the need for consistency, long-term clarity about policy to attract investors and give confidence to the industry. Didn't hear quite so much about regulation here, but similarly, the confidence in the regulation is part of the driver for investment, particularly for topics like decarbonisation. Now, I'm here representing the European space industry and space agency here. We can put tools in the hands of those regulators. For example, methane. We can tell you exactly where the methane is coming from and how much. So carbon dioxide a little bit more difficult, but several of the pollutants we can do that for. But in order to really be effective, this really needs to be working globally. There needs to be international consensus on how to apply these regulations. So if IEA can get involved in that agenda, I think we would be happy to contribute as well.
Thank you. Again, the live stream will come at some point, and those who want to watch it can stay and do it over here. But John, you'll have to, yeah.
Thank you for your comments about the electricity transition. Europe's entire industrial economy is founded on energy. 3/4 of the energy used in primary polymers, metals, minerals production is in the form of heat, not electricity. And dependence on imported fuels over just the last few years has caused the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs, the collapse of some industries by more than 50%. And today, there are sovereign local energy sources, intermittent renewables, intermittent electricity in the grid that is now half the cost or less than today's cost of fossil fuels. Rondo is bringing to scale the world's lowest cost energy storage targeted at industrial heat. And the electrostate transition needs an integrated look at grid policies and industrial heat policies. 90% of our European projects are waiting years for a grid connection. And we see it as a matter of economic security for industry as a whole to accelerate those connections and to look carefully at the notion of dispatchable load. Heat batteries can be controlled by grid operators and benefit the grid as well as delivering energy at half the cost of fuels today. And we are keen, the IEA began consideration in this year's State of Innovation. We're delighted at that, and we're keen to work with policymakers to speed that transition, opening the grid to make it possible to drive the electricity transition to the next level.
Thank you. We've got 2 interventions left from University of Southampton and AT Africa, but I'd ask you to just come here and feed those to Tim Urgul, because we are going to have to close this session so that we can have the ministerial meeting on the screens now. Thank you, everybody.
So just to say, you're welcome to stay in the room and watch the ministerial opening from here. We'll reconvene at 3:20 here for the next session.